So the premise of my idea is that an artist is making art for two reasons. One, they might make art for themselves. So it's more of a meditation technique. So they don't show it to anyone.
Yeah.
They're just, doodling and drawing and painting to calm the mind and all of those sort of things. And then maybe they just have like a collection for their house. Then the next would be art to share with the world. And in sharing it, suddenly you've created a relationship where you've put your art out there and now an audience is looking at it. And for me, that makes complete sense. That all works except for abstract art, because abstract art gets quite difficult and esoteric. And then what's the
Jackson
point?
Pollock stuff. Yeah.
Yes. So I kind of instantly have to account for that straight away. It feels like one of the first things I have to account for is like, I understand craft and like spending time and making beautiful images, and like those images speak for themselves in many ways, because it's like you've dedicated your skill to creating this sort of beautiful image of, maybe it's a boat in a storm.
Yeah, or like I always think of like the huge canvases that people drew with like tiny little pencils. It's like, okay, well, this is clearly an expression of skill, time, effort, and all that. Whereas a Pollock, it just, well, here's going to spray paint on it. It's like, well,
and the thing about like embedding skill and craft into your artwork, and like and it being obvious that there's like so much effort involved, makes the work inherently life affirming, because it's like,
it speaks for itself.
There's a dedication there that is like, wow, someone's fucking spent their time and energy just like into this thing, and therefore the audience has to take it seriously, because it's a phenomenon. Because someone's actually done something impressive, and so you have to kind of treat it with the level of respect that it deserves, right? And that's why people go to the Mona Lisa every year, and it's sort of like, it grips them, because there's skill and talent there, and there's something mysterious about it. And then as it gets even more, as even more people go, it gets more mysterious, because it's like, why are so many people going to look at this?
And but then there's then there's the historical context around it, like this is Leonardo da Vinci, right? Da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa, right? So you have that whole myth making around that, and it's like a culture hero type thing.
And then there's also like, a shared recognition that we can all just sort of like recognize the canon of good works, right? And then you get this whole wave of abstract art, which I struggle with, because it's like that thing of like, I kind of get the feeling a child could do this, and then it's like, what's the? And
it's postmodern.
So then it's like,
or it's at least partaking in the postmodern.
So, but this is like one of the things I was working through with my Substack, is like, okay, so take away the context and look at the art without any of the context. And it's like, suddenly, if you're in a garage and you're cleaning out stuff and you find a Jackson Pollock, you might just think, oh, my child like was messing around, I'll throw this in the bin. It's not like inherently speaking to you on like a way of like, please treat me with respect. It's kind of like splattering paint on the floor. But I understand when you add the context and you see that Pollock could paint, and that he chose to sort of let out his anger and his frustration and all his kind of potential demons, and was kind of like making this art as like meditation or whatever, then it's quite an interesting like premise of like, oh look, like someone's struggling with something and he's like expressing it in like a more like sort of animalistic way.
And it's interesting.
That can actually be quite confronting in a gallery.
Right. If, like, for example, if you know that here's a painting done by someone while they were having a schizophrenic break, it's suddenly like, okay, now there's the added context. What's interesting, we're talking about art, we're talking about visual art. Music doesn't seem to music has to sort of stand for its own, right? Whereas visual art, like the Jackson Pollock equivalent of music is just
screaming.
Or just white noise, or not even white noise, just random. It's just like,
for me, it would be like expressing emotion. It would just be like, and then kind of like making it sound.
And so with visual art, we have more leeway in what we're willing to like. Oh, we can have context that will make it, that will charge it with meaning, but music doesn't really have that. And it's interesting. I've heard this quote: "All art aspires to the quality of music." That's like a repeated theme I hear when I listen to philosophers of aesthetics and all that. Not that it's the truth or whatever, but it is. It's interesting.
And I'd say,
Well, what? So are there particular What particularly do you want to show me on here?
I'd just say, like, having accounted for the abstract art, and the way I account for it is treating it more like a Zen koan, which is not something where there's inherently something to decipher or decrypt from the art. It's more something to meditate over.
What is a Zen koan again?
A Zen koan is a paradoxical story where there's no, it's an unsolvable riddle, right?
An unsolvable riddle.
Yeah. And so,
like the example that you gave me is, what is the sound of one hand clapping?
yeah. And you can try and over intellectualize it and try and do that, but it's more about what happens when there's no partner in a hand.
Yeah.
It's
Would an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object, is that a Zen koan?
That's potentially. I need to like think about that deeper, but it's not. That's not a traditional Zen koan, because I think that's from Batman.
But the hypothetical of
You know, I guess that
happens.
exactly, that would be kind of like a paradoxical riddle. So like, and I think part of the fun for a riddle is trying to solve it, right? There is a punchline, and then having a riddle where there's no punchline, the kind of puzzling over an unsolvable riddle is kind of, I guess, fun in like a Buddhist sense. You can kind of meditate over it for a few hours, but then I think it kind of runs out of steam, because it's like, if everything's a Zen koan, then it's just a lot of like noise. And I think that's what happened to the sort of abstract art world. And like a lot of people, you know, I think, I can't remember his name, but one of these like famous artists said there's too much abstract art now. It's just like become this big thing where it's like everything's a Zen koan, everything's unsolvable. So I think, setting that aside as like a separate thing, I think treating art and films and poetry and music as they do have a point and they are trying to get across something, that makes it, for me, more interesting in terms of the meme discussion and quote unquote winning the meme war or spreading good memes. Yeah. And having come across your work, I think I watch films with an additional lens. I used to watch films on a technical level, and then on a dialogue level, and then on like whether I enjoyed the film. And now I watch it more on like, what is this film trying to do and put into the culture? What are they trying to add to the mix in the culture? And I'm seeing like the messaging and the director's voice more clearly, because I'm kind of more aware of, they have their ideology, and the film is kind of a conduit for a lot of that, unless they're doing what I think a lot of other people should do, which is like stop trying to use films as like an overt thing.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I like I'm curious, like film as a transmission of memes and ideology. And I'm not using ideology in the parasitic sense, but in the terms of all belief systems or ideologies, we could say, implicit or otherwise. That makes sense to me.
So I think when a film's operating at its most sort of truthful and honest way, I think the function of it, and this is something Roger Ebert said, which is film is a machine for empathy, right? And I think the underlying truth is similar to the Joseph Campbell idea, that is, we're all sort of heroes in our own journey, and we're all going through things. I think there's like this idea of like truth, beauty, goodness, right, as the transcendental values. But we often forget there's a fourth one, which is unity. And I think film taps into that as well. So it's truth, beauty, goodness, and unity.
Who added unity?
I think that was just there from the beginning.
Interesting. Okay.
And the unity aspect is this recognition that I'm always striving to remember, which is we're all human. We all just rocked up here. We're all going through stuff and different challenges and traumas, and we're all trying to figure it out. And I think that recognition, coming back to that, can often get quite like, you know, Hollywood, we're all just going through it, whatever, but actually truly and deeply recognizing that we're all, and I think often even in religion, people are like the non-religious and the religious, atheist and the non-atheist, and I like to go back to, we're all kind of agnostic, because you can't be certain either way. And I think, yes, there can be greater degrees of belief and faith in that, and that can be shown through people's actions, fine, but we're all kind of swimming in the same soup of like, not knowing.
Yeah.
And so that recognition, that unity that I think film can imbue, because a good film should be tapping on the religious archetype of the Peterson framework of we're both hero and adversary.
Yep.
Culture is both tyrannical and ordered, and nature is both destructive and chaotic. And if it's doing all of that, then we can all relate. And that's a shared reality that we can all relate. So then film, if it's doing that, then it's basically just telling these stories, like you said, on the archetypal meme curve, of like taking the archetype, which is like that story, and telling it in different contexts, and just constantly reaffirming to the audience that we're all in this together. And so anytime a film diverts from that and starts showing one side of the story, I'm just hyper aware of that.
Yeah, well, like the example that is really good is the Western film, positive culture, positive individual, negative nature, or whatnot. You can still tell a good, compelling story because those archetypes have enough. You can pick one archetype and it's compelling. But yeah, I think I mean, a religious story is one that tells all 6 archetypes. Like a religious in terms of like depth. If we can say the deepest stories are those that are religious, which is why like people have a religious commitment to certain movies or something like that. Those be the ones that have the depth.
Well, it's also interesting that, Harry Potter has a bit of Voldemort within him. You know, and even in Star Wars, the new ones, Rey has a bit of, Kylo Ren. Like there's like they always try and make the hero connected to the villain in some sort of extra way.
Or they have like divine parents and earthly parents. Like that's a very common archetype. It's like,
I
used to think that was like, because a lot of this you can like boil down to like literary stuff. You can like a lot of this stuff you can boil down to like literary comparison or whatever, and that always seems super reductive or whatever. Where it's like, oh, we're just comparing these. This is a trope here. This is a trope here. It doesn't mean anything psychologically, but it can seem super like, oh, we're just doing like literary analysis. But it's like, okay, wait a minute. When the same literary theme shows up repeatedly, that is a real psychological phenomenon. It's like, and. Yeah, like with all the different...
And then what do those phenomenons
Yeah,
reveal about
the structure of reality? Yeah.
And that's a very worthwhile investigation to go on and basically try and break. And there's so many people doing that.
Okay, I know you've got all these slides.
Yeah.
I want to know what.
Yeah, I can briefly sort of show you my thought process. So, this slide was to do with abstract art being more of a Zenkoan and that sort of, and then film.
Yep.
Let's get to, I think this scene, okay, we can just play this. This is quite just fun to watch. I don't know if you've seen Ex Machina.
No. I need to. Deus Ex Machina.
It's a very good scene.
No, just Ex Machina, right? Deus Ex Machina is the term. Okay.
You know this guy, right?
Jackson Pollock.
Jackson Pollock, that's right, the drip painter. Okay, he let his mind go blank and his hand go where it wanted. Not deliberate, not random, someplace in between. They called it automatic art. Let's make this like Star Trek, okay? Engage intellect.
Excuse me?
I'm Kirk, your head's the warp drive. Engage intellect. What if Pollock had reversed the challenge? What if instead of making art without thinking, he said, you know what? I can't paint anything unless I know exactly why I'm doing it. What would have happened?
He never would have made a single mark.
Yes, you see, there's my guy. There's my buddy who thinks before he opens his mouth. He never would have made a single mark. The challenge is not to act automatically. It's to find an action that is not automatic, from painting to breathing to talking to fucking to falling in love.
Intentionality.
Yeah.
Being the theme of that. What about that stood out to you most?
That to me is like it's quite a pretentious whole scene. Kind of like engage intellect. Let's like talk about this. But it's a fun thing to kind of show what abstract art can then do as a consequence of the conversation that happens afterwards.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, dude, when we went to church service the last time you were here, I was like, the service was, it was fine or whatnot. But then the three of us talked for like an hour afterwards. It's like, oh, this is the value. This is it's not like being, I mean, there's good stuff to be reminded of and lectured about, but it's the conversation that happens afterwards that certainly has the psychological potency.
No, I think if one, and it's kind of left brain, right brain dichotomy as well. It's like I went to Tate Modern once without anyone, and I just walked around and like let things kind of try and speak to me more organically rather than trying to force it. And I think that is a more worthwhile task, although I still struggle with a lot of it, but it's still, I guess, it's a different process.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just a fun scene that you should definitely watch that film.
Yes, I need to add that to my
It's a good one. It's also
list.
about like AI and how it does things. Yeah, this was the film Matrix.
Yes, I like
that
this.
I made. So there's a guy called Andrew Stanton. His idea is the optimal engagement is to let the audience participate in the meaning finding of the film. You're kind of guiding the audience to an aha moment, and this is very similar to the sort of idea of catharsis that Aristotle was talking about, where you kind of, the story and the narrative are all constructed in order for the audience to have a aha moment and kind of maybe resolve some things that they're going through. And so Stanton calls it the unifying theory of 2 + 2. So you don't give them 4. You don't say 4 because 4 is so boring. You kind of let them kind of add it up and get to the answer. And if you do that, then hopefully everyone in the audience will kind of get to the same answer because you've set it up that way. But
that is like a cardinal rule of therapy, where the therapist is never supposed to tell the patient, like, your problem is you haven't forgiven your father. The therapist is supposed to ask questions. If the therapist has a suspicion, this person's relationship with their father needs to be mended or something, they don't say that. Well, so, I mean, the cardinal rule is you have to let you have to walk they have to get to that point themselves. Sort of like Inception.
Yeah.
You can't just like implant an idea. You have to implant it so deep that it's as if they arrived at it themselves.
Okay.
Which is an interesting.
And this is where it gets interesting, right? So my premise is films as a meme inception tool, right?
Okay.
And the whole film.
Oh, literally like Inception,
whole
like the
film
movie Inception.
Inception is a metaphor for cinema, right?
That's what Christopher Nolan.
No, but there's been like loads of video essays, like 5 video essays explaining it. Because basically, Cobb is the producer / director, and he has to get.
Which one's Cobb? Is that Leonardo?
He's Leonardo DiCaprio.
Okay.
And then he has, I can't remember the different names, but he has the architect who's sort of the production designer who builds the sets.
The dream.
And then you have Tom Hardy, who's the sort of financier who kind of comes in. Actually you got the rich kind of guy, Sato guy, who's the financier. So you've got all the different teams, right? And they're all on a mission to incept Cillian Murphy's character, right? And they even say in the film, catharsis is the only way to do it. We can't tell him how to break up the company. We have to let him forgive his father in a cathartic moment in order for him to break up the company. So then they create this whole scene in the deep of his subconscious, level 5 of his subconscious, where his dad says, no, I always wanted you to do something else with your life. I loved you. And it's like he keeps this like little painting in his safe.
That shows that he cared about him the whole time. That shows that
he cared about him. And so then he cries, and that catharsis, that purgation of emotion, when he rises to the top in the aeroplane, Cillian Murphy's character doesn't even know he's been incepted, but he feels lighter. You can tell his character feels like, I don't need to follow in my father's footsteps. I can now go on as my own man. And so they get what they wanted. So they incepted him.
Yeah.
Film is doing the same thing. The interesting thing about film is how explicit one wants to be. And I think
That's the balance of the
That's
archetype
the
and the
balance,
mundane.
right? And
If it's too on the nose, it's too on the nose.
and that's the thing I struggle with the most, right?
That is funny that I'd never put the Inception being a metaphor for filmmaking.
Yeah.
That really
So at
engaged
film
me
school,
right there.
right? And this is, I knew this intuitively, but not explicitly. And so this is why I like to say these things out loud so you can kind of build the framework. But
Yeah.
all the films at film school are young people trying to make films with meaning, right? They're so explicit about the meaning of the film. It's
Yes.
just so 2 + 2 = 4. Take it away. It's like a lecture to the audience.
Yeah.
And just like you watch like 10 short films, they're all about, you know, and a lot of them were I'll be honest, to do with like woke ideas.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
men are
And
creepy.
that's why, you know, we need to help out the marginalized or dispossessed. It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
okay.
there was usually like an anti-male tinge to all of it. It was like
Right.
men are creepy. Like the amount of films you go, okay, another creepy man. Like they've got the agenda.
Yeah, yeah,
Fine.
yeah.
The point I was trying to do with my films was trying to not be on the nose, but also try and have. And it's like that's the balance, right? And I read an article recently that said, in many ways, you have to let go of what you're trying to do, right? So I wrote a film about this film called Take 10, about an artist trying to make a masterpiece. And he's really battling with his crew to make this masterpiece. And I was grappling at the time with my own sort of stuff and like trying to like imbue the film with meaning and trying to like get in there and change it. But actually, this article said what one should do is let go of all of that and go into their unconscious and let that unconscious reveal itself to you and trust that it's the collective unconscious.
Yeah.
And so rather than try and be so explicit, you kind of tell the story in the most truthful way you can of like, that character would do this in this moment. Not because he's a mechanism of to serve my mission. But because I think that's just how people are.
That's how reality
That's
is
how
set up.
reality is. That's how people are. So then you create the dynamic where people are behaving how they just are, rather than how I want them to be to fit my narrative. And then in doing that, you trust that the audience have the same collective unconscious as you, and also get it. And then that's when the story is most profound, and that's when you incept them the best, because you're not incepting them, you're just revealing something. It's a revelation. That's what church does a lot of the time. It's revealing something rather than.
This is exactly in line with Ralph Waldo Emerson, his essay on self-reliance, which is like a kind of almost a meme, like Matthew McConaughey talks about all the time. And essentially in the first paragraph, he says something to the effect, or first couple of paragraphs, he says something to the effect of like, true genius is trusting that your internal conception of something to the effect, I'm paraphrasing. True genius is trusting that your internal conception of the world is reflective of reality, and that when you put it out there, others will see it for what it is. And then the other point is the Viktor Frankl, that which is pursued cannot ensue point, which might be the deepest philosophical lesson that I have internalized is, you know, in order for the thing that you want to manifest, be it you want to convey a message, you want to have fun, you want to learn or whatever, you don't make that the object of your pursuit. What you do is you pursue a higher order goal, and then that consequence, the thing that you want, will ensue naturally. Yeah. So like if you're hosting a party and you're like, dude, I want to have fun, it's like, no, you don't do that. You say, we're going to play a game. And I'm going to try, and the game is arbitrary. I'm going to try really hard to win this board game. And in the process, you'll have fun because you've established a different goal, and by pursuing that goal, the fun ensues as a result. So in storytelling, it's like, I want to tell this story, or I want to convey this message. No, you set up a scenario that you think about, like, how would a person really act in this situation, and then the meaning will ensue from that if your model of reality is correct and all that.
Yeah.
So I like that a lot.
And it goes back to the unity thing of like that being the goal of film, is like trusting everyone's collective unconscious will get that we're all sharing in that process of the hero journey of like solving problems, coming back out, slaying dragons, and that's kind of the process of, and that's why, good films that's their kind of goal, is that kind of shared thing, and that's good art as well, and it's all, and then that goes to the perennial idea of like the hero's journey, and that being the meta meme of reality and stuff. So I can see how it kind of ties in with the meme stuff, but also dark centrism and integration. It's all kind of in there, in that process. Which brings me to a clip that we can show, which is, I'll set this. Have you seen Apocalypse Now?
No, I don't think so.
So that's an absolute classic.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know Apocalypto.
So Apocalypse Now is Francis Ford Coppola. He
Okay.
goes to the Philippines, and it's a complete shit show of a film set, right? Martin Sheen has a heart attack on the set. The helicopters that they're
Is this in the movie or is this
No,
real
this
life?
is the behind the scenes.
Okay.
And there's a documentary called In the Heart of Darkness, which shows the behind the scenes of the film. The film ends up being a masterpiece, but the stuff that they have to do to kind of get there is crazy.
Interesting. What is Apocalypse Now about again? Is it Vietnam or something?
Vietnam.
Okay,
yeah.
that's right. I do vaguely recall this.
And so he's battling with like getting the helicopters, hiring them from the Filipino army, and then like his actor has a heart attack. He has to like figure that one out, and like all of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then also like, what does the film even mean or do? And he's struggling with the messaging in the film. And so this is like, I think, the archetype of the artist.
Okay.
Nothing is so terrible as a pretentious movie. I mean, a movie that aspires for something really terrific and doesn't pull it off is shit, it's scum. And everyone will walk on it as such. And that's why poor filmmakers, in a way, that's their greatest horror, is to be pretentious. So here you are, on one hand, is trying to aspire to really do something. On the other hand, you're not allowed to be pretentious. And finally you say, fuck it. I don't care if I'm pretentious or not pretentious, or if I've done it or I haven't done it. All I know is that I am going to see this movie. And that for me, it has to have some answers. And by answers, I don't mean just a punchline. Answers on about 47 different levels. And it's very hard to talk about these things without being very corny. You use a word like self-purgation or epiphany, they think you're either a religious weirdo or an asshole college professor. But those are the words for the process, this transmutation, this renaissance, this rebirth, which is the basis of all life.
For me, that's what one is trying to do.
Yeah.
It's not be pretentious, and then just let go. And it's like kind of that thing of like letting go and like letting the story speak for itself.
And it's kind of like if your psyche as a director or whatever, a film producer, is fucked, if your model of reality is ideologically tainted, is possessed, and you actually think that your ideological conception of the world is an accurate model of the world, you think you'll feel like you're doing this process, and then you'll produce something that's propagandistic and nonsense or whatever. Which is, so it's almost like, again, well, how do you be a good director? Well, first you need to be a psychologically balanced person.
Yes.
Right? You need to be someone whose model of reality is reflective of reality. And if it's propagandistic, if it's ideological in terms of like rigid dogmas or something like that, you're gonna be wrong, and you're gonna produce shit.
And that goes back to film school, in the sense of like, in many ways, if you're that young, you haven't integrated a lot of your ideas yet. So,
yeah, right.
So the films aren't only in your face, but they're also kind of wrong and in your face, because they're kind of like incorrect versions of reality that are so like, they don't match up with what I like to call like real life probabilities. So if there's like 5 characters that are all assholes in the film, it's like, when does that happen in real life where you like meet 5 assholes back to back to back? It's like, there's clearly an agenda here where you view the world as being a whole load of assholes, but that doesn't match up with the audience's perspective.
Can we talk about Backrooms?
Yeah.
Okay, because Kane Parsons is like 20 years old.
Yeah.
So this point, like, while younger people don't have as much experience in life, so if they're trying to tell a complete story, they're often going to have to borrow from ideology or what they've heard or whatnot. Backrooms is interesting because, in my opinion, it is sort of in the modern world where we're stripped of religion, we don't like hell and all that. Like, how does the modern secular mind contend with the infinite, contend with the mystery of life? We have to have this weird like scientific kind of twist on it, which is what Backrooms is. It's like, well, there's this liminal space. It's in between, like, it's in our subconscious and it's memory. So we're using what we understand about modern psychology. We're putting like a scientific twist on it. And since Kane Parsons, since we all live in that world of like, well, what is, you know, what happens after you die? What exists like interdimensionally? What is all this like multiverse type stuff? He's telling a true story. It's not an ideology. It's like we live in the modern secular world where there's all this just mystery but it's not religious, so it must be like scientifically tainted. So there's this like endless labyrinth, which is a mythological thing or whatever. And I thought it was, again, there was the whole aspect of like he's building upon the meme that that started, but like that's what drew the psychological potency of the film. It wasn't telling you a lesson about human nature. It was like, we don't have a good conception for like what happens when you die, and so we have to have this like pseudo mystic, because it is mystical, but it's like concretized in like a modern secular context. We have scientists examining it and all that stuff, and it's using like Freudian psychology and the id and all that.
Well, the two things I'd say about Backrooms and stuff is, one, I don't think age is a thing. Like, you have to be older. It's more about maturity and sophistication. So I think an 18-year-old that's like lived a life and he's like really experienced a lot of things and is quite sophisticated and mature, he can tell quite a well-rounded story, I think. So it's not necessarily age, it's more maturity. The other thing I'd say, Kane Parsons, the thing when Backrooms was really working was when he's of a generation that grew up playing video games, right? And a lot of his inspiration came from like, when you wander a video game, like you're wandering around a video game and there's no other people in the game, it has this weird liminal feeling. You're kind of like running around, you can just hear the breathing of the character, and you're kind of running around rooms and you're kind of like looking for people. And maybe it's in Call of Duty or Zombies. If you're used to that feeling of like you're in a map and you're running around and where are the zombies at, like you're kind of like, he's tapping into that sort of shared thing amongst like the gaming community. And I think that was like the thing that connects to a kind of existential thing that people can get freaked out by or just like experience. When Hollywood came in and were like, we need to have a therapist and an architect and the scientists, they're trying to make it more plotty. And actually that stuff was the stuff that felt a bit like kind of ham-handed, and like, so it's funny how his instinct was to kind of lean into the gaming, running around a map, not knowing what's going on, and Hollywood were the ones that are trying to make it more like explicit. But it's just interesting like how that's why you kind of preserve the original collective unconscious thing that you're tapping into.
Well, that's grounding in the archetype, into the, like, you have to relate it to people's context. And again, I wrote that Substack article about everything you know is a metaphor for something else. It's like the reason that people like, or the reason that the videos that I make that are using video game terminology and concepts to offer political and cultural commentary or insight, it works because you have a pre-established cognitive architecture in your mind that you've developed, and you know all the nuances of video games, like that feeling. If you don't play video games, you don't know that feeling of the liminal space or whatever. Or like, being in a chat, an Xbox Live chat room and everyone's cursing at each other. Like, there's particular experiential things that you have to experience to build that cognitive architecture. Then there's just the conceptual, like, well, in video games you have different classes, right? So you could be an archer or a swordsman or a sniper or and it's like, when you play the games, you have that internalized sense of different classes. They have different play styles and all that. So then once you have that framework, you can then use it to communicate other information. In my case, it's more like political and cultural commentary. But then if you want to do archetypal stuff, it's like, well, it's the same process. You're using pre-established cognitive architecture and conceptual categories.
Well, in many ways, like, we're engaging like a left brain thing, discussing about a right brain phenomenon, which is like making art and stuff. But I think it is good to know, or good to kind of talk these things through to kind of get what you're trying to do and actually get when to pull back. Because if you don't know that, you think you're trying to send a message and then you screw it all up.
Yeah, well, you got to use I mean, one way to think about it is the left brain feeds information into the right brain, which becomes unconscious. So anytime you're learning something, you start out very left-brained, and then you do it repeatedly until it becomes unconscious. I think, like, in many, people who study like mastery and expertise, that's sort of the through line is mastery is being able to sort of unconsciously or instinctively do things that a novice has to consciously put their attention to. So the left brain is essentially feeding information to the right brain until it becomes intuitive, then you can just use it. So, like, if you're learning music, you have to sit there and do your scales, like and you have to build the muscle memory. And then if you've been playing piano for 10 years, you don't even, it's just built into your physiology at that point. And so you do need to do the left brain. The right brain works as a function of doing this kind of, you need to do the film analysis and the film theory to learn the mechanisms. And then they become so intuitive and all that,
I think there's like even like an idea that it starts in the front, it moves to the back, and then moves to the right. Like a lot of the knowledge is actually literally moving in your brain to the point of just process. Yeah. No, I think that's the benefit of film school and growing up and like educating yourself, is that you're engaging with these ideas, and then eventually you kind of want to just embody a lot of the wisdom that you've been talking about for so long.
Well, even just like social interaction, it's like, how many times do you have to consciously fuck up, and be like, oh, that joke doesn't, that type of joke doesn't land, or like, maybe I shouldn't say this or something like that, where you can kind of like, you can articulate the rules of good social interaction.
Yeah.
Even though when you're engaging it, you're not explicitly thinking like, I'm going to do this, that you just know, like, I'm not going to make this joke.
The thing I still fuck up every single time is like, I still like fuck up like the handshake, or if it's like the kiss on both cheeks. Like, I'm always just like, what? Like,
oh yeah, oh dude. Yeah.
I'm like, why has this not become natural yet?
I know.
I see other people do it so easily.
That's funny. There's always awkwardness in terms of like, do I give him a handshake or do I give him like kind of a bro hug or whatever? Like, I met this one guy I used to work with who I got lunch with like 6 months later. We were like, not friends, but like, we could talk shit and all that. And I went for a handshake and he went for the bro hug, and it was kind of like, oh shit, whatever. It's just like, in that case, the most important thing you learn is that socially well-adjusted people don't not have awkward moments. They just don't let the awkwardness affect them. It's like, oh, okay, cool. And then you just move past it. Whereas someone who's super like, oh shit, now they think I'm weird. It's like, that's what a truly well-adjusted person does. Anyway.
Yeah.
Are there any other core points you want to hit?
I like the idea of like the debate that's going on in the film. There's contrasting perspectives, right? And they're kind of battling out. That to me is what a good story's doing. Is it's got one perspective and it's meeting another perspective, and then it's like the synthesis idea of like, maybe there's like a way, and there's a point in the film where there's this structure that the film usually follows, which is like, you go into the unknown, you meet a figure that's sort of counter to your already existing beliefs. You adopt their beliefs, but then you undergo some growing pains when you're kind of integrating their beliefs, and then you panic and you revert back to your original beliefs and you reject them. And just as you're rejecting them, that's when the film usually imparts the most profound bit of wisdom.
From the perspective of the person that you're rejecting?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's when they'll speak to you and literally inject that last little bit of wisdom, like, this is what I think. You reject them, and then that kind of night of the dark storm, and then you come out the other side, and then usually at the very end, they'll realize, oh, they were right all along.
Yeah.
And if the film's sophisticated, it will end there and let the audience know that they'll go on to be more integrated.
Yeah.
But sometimes they show the scene of them being more integrated, like happy ending. But a lot of the time, the ambiguous ending is letting the audience participate in that aha moment, and then the film just nicely ends.
Yeah. And
there's 3 scenes that I think do this really well. We don't necessarily need to watch them, but there's this scene which is from Sicario.
Okay.
Do you remember?
Yeah, yeah.
This is... Kate's character is law and order. We need to play by the rules. Josh Brolin's character is, there are no rules. We make the rules, and we're just playing on a meta game, which is like, they're evil. We need to be also kind of evil to match them.
The problem will be solved when 20 million Americans stop doing heroin or something like that, or whatever.
Literally.
Until then, this is what we have to do.
So this is what you'd call that scene.
Medellin refers to a time when one group controlled every aspect of the drug trade, providing a measure of order that we could control. And until somebody finds a way to convince 20% of the population to stop snorting and smoking that shit, order's the best we can hope for. Alejandro works for anyone who will point him toward the people who made him. Us. Them. Anyone who will turn him loose. So he can get the person that cut off his wife's head and threw his daughter into a vat of acid. Yeah. That's what we're dealing with.
If you see what that film's doing, there's two things it's doing. One is talking about the Americans doing the drugs, right? So that's a problem that is very difficult to solve. The other is the recognition that the opposition aren't playing by the rules, cutting off someone's head, throwing the daughter into a vat of acid. We're playing in a different level of evil and stuff. So, and then that is kind of the realpolitik thing of like, exist in the real world. These things happen. Let's exist in that world rather than the idealistic world. And that's the clash of the two ideas.
Yep.
And so that's where a film that's functioning on that level, where it's the clash of ideas and then basically how the character deals with that integration.
Yeah.
Ultimately, she struggles to integrate that. And then that's kind of the ending, is kind of like whether or not she will be able to live with herself.
Yeah.
And then the same applies for, I won't show you these, like the same applies for...
I think I know both
these
the scenes, yeah.
So...
It's powerful.
Yeah. That's what I'm looking for in films, is seeing the ideas clash and seeing how it gets synthesized and getting that aha moment, and it hopefully it rings true to a wide audience, basically.
Yeah.